Do you have trouble falling asleep sometimes, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep? I created a special meditation to help you fall asleep. With soothing, relaxing music and binaural beats, this meditation takes you on a hypnotic journey to the astral plane to experience pure love. And I can tell you from personal experience, it works. Check it out at hightimelinebooks.com. And sweet dreams. Welcome in to the Fun Astrology Podcast for Wednesday the 9th, Hump Day. Thomas Miller, and we're going to talk more about things that are going on right now in current events because there are no exact aspects in the sky. The only thing up there above us is the moon squares Jupiter tonight. It's like almost 9 o'clock Eastern. So all day we'll be in that, and if things are going haywire, maybe they'll expand. I hope not. But that's exactly what I wanted to talk about here, because obviously everybody is talking about these tariffs and what's going on in the country, what's going on in the world with the markets and everything. And in order to get these podcasts out at 3 a.m. Eastern every day, they obviously have to be recorded earlier. I am not up at 2 o'clock in the morning recording these things. And being on the road, I have to get these done a couple of days early. So this is recorded on Monday for Wednesday. I apologize for not being a little bit more current. I am going to try to do Friday closer to the real time just to see where we are. But I ran across something amazing. The backstory on this is spending time with my family, memorializing my cousin who passed this last summer. The suggestion came up that we watch the Reagan movie. Now, this is crazy because at the time of the discussion of that, all I had with me during the whole time was my cell phone. It was in the room when we watched the movie. It was there when several people were asking questions about the tariffs and what do you think and all this. It was in the room then. And then the next morning on my YouTube screen was a video from Ronald Reagan from 1985. Back then, the president did a weekly radio address, and this YouTube video was of him recording it from his ranch in California. I was blown away. I'm going to play you about 4 minutes of it. It's only 5 minutes, but I took about a minute out. This is copyright available for us to do this as long as we credit and say that it's courtesy of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, which I am happy to do, and even to mention that there is an exhibit going on at the library right now of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I wanted to go see it before I left, but you have to buy tickets, and they are in a time window, and it was too far out. The reservations were too far up. You're looking at about 3 or 4 days, but boy, if you're in the area, I would absolutely take advantage of that, and it would be a worthwhile trip too. You can look at all that up on the website of the Presidential Library, the Reagan Library, but this is from them in a minute that I'll play, and I just thought it was something that all of us should hear. And let me point out that also this would have been inspired by an astrologer. After the assassination attempt, President Reagan and Nancy used Joan Quigley to basically gave her full control of the White House and their calendar. And she had the ultimate decision on whether they were going to do something. So as we listen to this, I think we can safely assume that Joan Quigley, the White House astrologer, at least had her stamp of approval on it. I'm growing more concerned every day. And the reason is because of the astrology and just looking at this squarely and fairly. We still are in the orb of the United States Pluto return from 2022. Remember, Pluto came back and then through retrogrades hit 3 times the spot in the chart where it was at 27 degrees Capricorn 250 years ago. We don't have a precedent for that in modern times. The other thing we have that is upon us right now and is the theme of the day now is Neptune has entered Aries. And I went back and looked up several times in the past. Now, this only can happen every 165 years. But the last time it happens was literally the day after the Civil War started. That was 1861. Go back again, 1697, the Spanish Secession War. 1533, hopping back again, King Henry VIII of England broke from the Church of England, and that started the battle for the Protestant Reformation. Hop back to 1370, the Hundred Years' War between England and France. 1206, Genghis Khan began his conquest of Eurasia. And you hop back several more before that to 551. There was another war that none of us could relate to, but it was a Byzantine war back in the 500s. So 6 times out of 1,000 years, and this can only happen every 150 years, that's a definite majority of the time that Neptune moved into Aries, there has been some kind of conflict in the world. And you know that when you stack up astrology and you start to get a pattern, it really is pretty hard for that pattern not to fulfill. So we have the U.S. Pluto return, Neptune entering Aries, the 5 planets changing signs within about a 2-year period, 2.5, something that has never happened before. Uranus is in Taurus, which is where it was during some of the parts of the Great Depression. You have Pluto in Aquarius squaring Uranus in Taurus, and I did mention this on the special report video that's on the YouTube channel. But then when you come across something like this, and Ronald Reagan was just an amazing individual. Whether you liked his politics or not, he definitely led the country to higher ground. He was a high timeline kind of guy. It was who he was inside, and it definitely came out in his demeanor and in how he led the country. So the setup for this Labor Day weekend radio address, 1985, there was congressional pressure to start a trade war, which he refers to as a protectionist philosophy, that is, protecting the United States. Exactly what Donald Trump is saying right now. President Reagan references the Smoot-Hawley Act of 1930. That's Smoothhawley. I would encourage every one of you to look that up and to read about what it was. Just from a Google search is enough. 1930, President Herbert Hoover, who of course oversaw the Great Depression, at least the start of it, he passed this act that included up to about a 20% tariff on 20,000 items in order to protect farmers. That was the objective. Well, the outcome was a global trade war, and sales worldwide dropped 66% over the next 5 years. That's one statistic that showed up. I don't know. Wasn't there and can't confirm it. But Ronald Reagan mentions that he was there and remembered it, and that's why he was so concerned about tariffs. Now, I know we're going to go a little bit long here. This is another 4 minutes. This is Ronald Reagan's radio address from 1985 Labor Day weekend.
My fellow Americans, last Wednesday I notified Congress of my decision not to impose either quotas or tariffs on foreign shoe imports into this country. I'd like to talk with you about that decision because the case of shoe imports illustrates why so-called protectionism is almost always self-destructive, doing more harm than good even to those it's supposed to be helping. Advocates of protectionism often ignore its huge hidden costs that far outweigh any temporary benefits. The Council of Economic Advisors estimate that the quotas on shoe imports that I turned down would have cost the American consumer nearly $3 billion. And there are other costs. Quotas would have entitled our trading partners to another $2 billion in compensation, or they would have retaliated, slapping quotas or tariffs on the products we sell to them. That would mean an immediate loss of American jobs and a dangerous step down the road to a trade war. Also, if our trading partners can't sell their products here, they can't afford to buy our exports, and that means more lost jobs for Americans. Protectionism almost always ends up making the protected industry weaker and less able to compete against foreign imports. Between 1977 and 1981, U.S. footwear manufacturers received protection from foreign imports, but at the end of that time, they were more vulnerable to foreign competition than before. Instead of protectionism, we should call it destructionism. It destroys jobs, weakens our industries, harms exports, costs billions of dollars to consumers, and damages our overall economy. Of course, free trade also means fair trade. We will move vigorously against unfair trading practices, using every legal recourse available to give American manufacturers a fair shake at home and open markets abroad. Despite a growing trade deficit, we've gained over 7.5 million new jobs since 1980. Our free, open, and growing economy has put more Americans to work in 1985 than ever before in our history. We've created more jobs in the last 3 years than Europe and Japan combined. The surest way to destroy those jobs and throw Americans out of work is to start a trade war. And one of the first victims of a protectionist trade war will be America's farmers, who have it tough enough already. A news story the other day said protectionist fervor on the Hill is stronger than it has been since the 1930s. Well, now, some of us remember the 1930s, when the most destructive trade bill in history, the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, helped plunge this nation and the world into a decade of depression and despair. From now on, if the ghost of Smoot-Hawley rears its ugly head in Congress, if Congress crafts a depression-making bill, I'll fight it, and whether it's a tax, trade, or farm legislation that comes across my desk, my primary consideration will be whether it is in the long-run economic interest of the United States. And any tax hike or spending bill or protectionist legislation that doesn't meet the test of whether it advances America's prosperity must and will be opposed. America is getting stronger, not weaker. We must not retreat into the failed policies of the past, whether they be protectionism or higher taxes. Let's go forward by cutting income tax rates again and building opportunity. On Monday, we'll be recognizing America's working men and women. We've created over 7 million jobs in the last 4.5 years. On this Labor Day, let's challenge ourselves to create 10 million more in the next 4. To do that, we're going to have to be courageous, hopeful, hard-working, and proud, which pretty well sums up what it means to be an American. There is one quality I left out: faith in the loving God who will continue to guide us on the optimistic course we've set. Until next week, then, thanks for listening, and God bless you.
That is what you call a second opinion to what's going on right now. And the big stark contrast is how somebody who has a personal faith and leads from optimism, the man told us that we could be a city shining on a hill again, led this country out of incredibly high inflation, low unemployment, turned everything around in the economics of the 1980s, and then President Bush inherited it for 4 years, didn't mess it up too bad, and then President Clinton also had a very good economic run during his presidency. So the 80s and 90s, after things got turned around, we had the big flush out in 1987 of the stock crash, but then things bounced right back up and pretty much took off. But the one marker that I remember clearly from those years was the optimism. We'll talk more even on Friday and in future videos about what we can do, but I do think it is time to shore up and to be more conservative, more cautious, and let's just get through all this shakiness and see where this is going to go. But we've been talking about it for about, 3 or 4 years together now, that the astrology coming into this period is looking shaky, and it's looking like something that caution is more advised. I hope that this prepares you, informs you, and arms you for good decisions on your own. That's the intention, not out of fear. We all have to go through this, so let's go through it on a high timeline with our intuition guiding us. Have a great Wednesday. I'll see you back on Friday. Kristin's here tomorrow. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.